Welcome to the Do You Remember podcast, the podcast that takes us back to happier times. My name is Zad Awaz and I am your host, and today I'm joined by stand-up comedian Zad Awaz.
Hello, how's it going, Adam? You okay?
Yeah, man, I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm enjoying myself, not doing anything. Staying safe and isolated.
And on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about Football Italia. So Zad, for those who may not know, please give us a brief synopsis. What was Football Italia?
Football Italia was basically the Italian Football League shown on Channel 4 in the 1990s.
Yeah, that's right. It was also a magazine show as well. So how did it start?
So Channel 4 got the rights to the live games. Because at the time, the Premier League went behind a paywall because Sky got the rights to it. So there's no live English top flight football anymore on TV. And then to fill that void, Channel 4 bought the rights to Football Italia. Now, apparently they wanted just to buy the rights for Lazio games to show Paul Gascoigne. But they were convinced to buy the whole rights. So then from that period and a few years later, we used to have every Sunday, there used to be live Italian football.
Nice one. And when was the first time that you remember hearing about Football Italia?
I reckon it's during the magazine program because Saturday mornings obviously used to be a time for kids. We used to have a kids' TV show. You have Live and Kicking, etc. on BBC One. And then you always got bored and you kind of shuffle through the channels, and then you came across. It was just before St. Greaves as well. I think St. Greaves was starting ITV a bit later on Football Focus. And then you had this kind of channel started off, the Gazette of Football Italia. So, and then they started talking about Italian football, and that's when it gripped me. That's when I found out about it.
Nice one. And you said it gripped you, so what was it that made you a fan of this TV show?
The pre-run obviously was Italian 90, right, World Cup, which was my first World Cup that I properly watched.
Yeah, because this show started in 1992, which is just 2 years after that World Cup. And I found it the exact same way you did. Obviously, a few years later, just sat there at home, flicking through the TV channels. But sadly, I was too young for Italia 90, so I missed all of that.
When Italia 90 was on, it was all kind of, I used to marvel at that World Cup. Probably because it's my first one, also because they had massive stadiums that were full. And I contrasted it to English football. And the maximum capacity used to be around like 40,000 for Man United, right? And then you had all these massive stadiums like the Delle Alpi and the San Siro and the Stadio Olimpico. So from that World Cup, I kind of knew. And then there was always that kind of Italian passion for football. So I always knew they had this passion for football. And also, after Italia 90, like the best English players, David Platt, Gascoigne, they went over to Italy. And you knew that Italian football, they were signing all the best players. And it wasn't even like, say with David Platt, that the best teams, the best Italian teams were signing them. It was kind of a newly promoted team. Bari signed David Platt. So when that team of that level was signing one of your best players from your league, right, it kind of made you take interest that this league must be something big. It must not be like a minor thing. Nice one.
And you mentioned like a few of the key English players that were in the league at the time. So who were some of the other like huge players that were in the league that made it like such a must-see TV?
At the time, right, you had like the Dutch trio, right, Van Basten, Rijkaard, Hulle. They used to form the bare bones of the Milan team. So they had those players. Then you had basically all the players. You had Klinsmann who played for Milan, the best German players. Matthias, I think, played for Inter. Sorry, Klinsmann played for Inter. You had the best German players, the best Dutch players. You had the best French players. I remember Papin went for like a record fee to Milan as well. So you were aware that all the best players were going to these teams. And plus at the time, right, Italian football, Italy, they had some of the best players as well at the time. A lot better than they have in this generation, the previous generation. So at the time they had Baggio, Del Piero, they had Baresi, they had Maldini, Costa Curta, Toldo. So you could roll those names off as well. So a combination of the best Italian players of their generation and the best foreign players, it made this kind of a melting pot of the best players gathered in one place.
So as a comparison then at the time, what was the Premier League like at the time? Because you've mentioned Sky had just got the rights, the Premier League was really just kicking off, so you couldn't really see it anymore on TV. So one, it was behind a paywall, but what was the actual quality like of the football in comparison to Serie A?
Quality, the thing, right, at the time I remember it was $2.99. When Sky first got the rights, they had this introductory offer, so my dad got that because we had cable, and it's only $2.99 a month. So the first season we had it, I think, for the first couple of seasons, right? And watching, obviously, I was a big Man United fan at the time, right? A Man United fan, that was just when they started to emerge from being a rubbish team into challenging for the first Premier League title, right? So I remember watching it, and you couldn't really compare the two because I was acutely aware when I was watching Man United, even though that's my league and my team, I was looking over with envy at the Italian football, knowing full well that they could outbuy any English team, even Man United being the biggest English team, and they get the best players. So whatever product you were watching, even though it's a lot more exciting English football, you knew we didn't have the best players. So by that kind of deduction, you knew that quality must be not as good.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, like, as a comparison, who would you say would like the top stars, or who the regular stars in the English Premier League? Because obviously, you said all the greats were kind of all gathering in Serie A. So, who was kind of left in the Premier League?
What you had is, right, I'll be perfectly honest, in that time in the 90s, right, there used to be this thing about, we've got some international players. Now, nowadays in the Premier League, we'll have all the best international players. That's kind of guaranteed. Us and Spain. But back then, right, we had so many Scandinavian internationals. So we're like, oh, look, he's a full international, but he's a Norwegian international, or a Danish international, or he's a Swedish international. They had all these kind of or an Irish international. So from United, back at the time, you had, like, say, Kanchelskis. He was a Russian player. That was one of our best players. Then he had Cantona. Cantona was a bit different. He was a bit of an enigma. He came from French football. You kind of knew who he was. Kind of like the Italian teams definitely did not want him or that type of person playing for them. So other teams that might have had, you had Arsenal signed John Jensen. You had Liverpool signing, players of that level against Scandinavia. A lot of Scandinavian players. Maybe they had, Jan Malby was probably one of the better imports. So you never really had teams that were signing elite country players or elite level players. So it was always kind of the second ones. And if you did have an Italian or a German come over, it'd be like Uwe Rosser for Man City. He was never nowhere near. He was a German, but he was nowhere near a German international. You had someone like what's his name? He played for Nottingham Forest, or the guy mentioned the other day. Andy Silenzi, that's it. He's an Italian that came over because they signed him to replace Stan Collymore, so they had some decent money to spend. Again, he was a nobody in Italy, right? So whenever you did sign an Italian or a German, it was never like a full international. If he was like kind of a squad player.
So what it sounds like to me was at the time, it was like when your mum comes home from shopping and she says she's got Snickers and Milky Ways, but really she's got like Tesco's own version of that.
Exactly.
That's kind of
exactly that. There's always that joke that comedian does. Why does Peter Kay's mum buy cheap pop?
Why does Peter Kay's mum
there's a response to
buy cheap pop?
Because he's a cheap scrubber from Bolton. We can edit that out afterwards.
Fuck's
we can edit that bit out afterwards. But you get the point, right? It's a good analogy. We did get right all the rubbish players. They're rubbish.
England got all the rubbish players, and these listeners now, they're getting all your rubbish jokes. So
fair enough, man. We can edit that out afterwards.
We'll see about that.
Yeah. But yeah, so we definitely I was aware, right? Look, we've not, and another thing is because in the one comparison you had when you compare the two was European football. So you had the European Cup, you had the Cup Winners' Cup at the time, and you had the UEFA Cup, right? So when it's English teams re-emerged, right, from the ban in the early 90s, right?
So again, for the people who don't know, just fill us in. Why was there a ban? Why were English teams not allowed in Europe?
Right, there was a ban because 1985 Heysel Stadium disaster, Liverpool versus Juventus. Liverpool fans misbehaved on that day. They caused the wall to crash down. It killed a number of Juventus fans. Now, what UEFA did is they made a blanket ban on all English teams for 5 years, not just Liverpool. Blanket ban because they said all the English guys are hooligans, which now is a bit harsh. That's what happened. So then, back in 1991 was the first year when they were allowed back in, and there'd been a big 5-year gap, right? In hindsight, now I know why English teams did good because they'd been out the loop. But back then I didn't know because I grew up right in the late 80s when I didn't know any European football. So I wasn't aware of the 80s when English teams used to win. So when I'm watching in the 90s, I'm watching all the European teams, even teams from France, even lesser teams from lesser countries beating English opposition. And that really sent home that reality that English football was not as good as the European equivalent, and definitely it lagged way behind Italian football. And if you look, even if you look at the European Cup winners, UEFA Cup winners, Cup winners of the 90s, it's dominated by Italian teams.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's very interesting that back in these days you had that complete flip of what it's like now, because nowadays the Serie A is kind of seen as a bit of a joke league. There's only really Juventus and they kind of dominate it. No one else kind of really rivals them. I think they've won it about 4 or 5 years in a row at this point. Whereas you got the Premier League.
They've won it like 7 years in a row.
There you go. So then you got the Premier League on the other hand, where it's basically a different winner every single year. It's always the top 4, but I mean, look at Leicester a couple of years ago, they won, and then the league is just full of all the best players.
I tell you another thing as well. When I noticed at the time, England has got this kind of inferiority complex a lot when it comes to continental Europe. A lot in terms of the food we eat, the fashion. It only changed when Blair kind of took over, Prime Minister, and he had this all kind of cool Britannia stuff, and then Oasis and everything all kind of said, look, we're cool enough. But back in the early 90s, yeah, Spice Girls, but back in the early 90s, right, it's very easy for people to ridicule England, and English people being polite would just say, yeah, you're right, instead of saying, no, we'll fight back. So I remember at the time, right, an Italian football president saying about English football, thinking it's rubbish. All it ever happens is Man United win all the time. How do you call that a league? Look at our league, Italy, we have different winners, right? Now look at the role reversal when you have Juventus winning all the time and you have different ones winning. But us as English people, we're not going out and ridiculing Italian football thinking, oh, you're rubbish. Our like kind of main statesman of the FA going and saying now, look how rubbish you are, how rubbish Italian football is. It's not the way we do it. But I remember at the time, Italian people and all that kind of, and Germans as well, and Spanish, it was a nice thing for them to ridicule English football. So it was done at the time, which made it feel even kind of reinforce that opinion that English football was rubbish.
So you mentioned the Italian teams; they had this kind of domination in Europe, and I was just actually looking over the Champions League winners from around that time, and AC Milan won it like in '88, in '89, in '90, and then again in '94. Then in '96, Juventus went and won it. So basically, they had this kind of domination like over the course of about 8 years, where they won it 4 times. And then the other years, Milan were in the final twice, Sampdoria were in the final twice. So they were always there and thereabouts.
Yeah, I'm not saying something when you have teams like Parma, all these lesser teams, which would be the equivalent of an Everton these days, still, and Fiorentina as well, having someone like Batistuta. That's the equivalent even less than even a lesser team than Everton. It's like the equivalent of like Aston Villa having like one of the world's best strikers. It's just how they had the domination and how it was spread. I don't think there's anything been like it since, or there will be. Because even at the time, Spanish football, Real Madrid did not sign anybody half decent. They had no money. They were skint. The only team that did was Barcelona. So it's basically Serie A plus Barcelona. And Barcelona had maybe third, fourth dibs. So they had Koeman, good player. Stoichkov was a good player, but he never would have made the top Italian teams. And then you had, I don't know which other foreigner they had, because there's a rule back in the 90s about 3 foreigners. That was a UEFA rule, so every team kind of had to adopt to that. They had 3 maximum foreigners. And the other one that I think Barca might have had Romario at the time. Again, Romario is a good player, but will he be in the top 10 of Brazilians over the last 20 years? Maybe scrape into that top 5. He wouldn't scrape into the top 5 over the last 20 years. So that kind of tells you like how much Serie A teams dominate, how much that league dominated with all the best players. It's almost like they had first dibs on all the best players. If they refused, then the other guys got the sloppy seconds, or the league's got the second, kind of got the second.
Yes, but I mean, to an extent, the Premier League did a very similar thing. From like 2004 up until about 2011, there was always a Premier League team in the final. Like 2005 was like Liverpool, the next year was Arsenal, Liverpool again, then it was United and Chelsea, United again. There was one year where it was Inter Bayern, but again, United were back in it, then Chelsea were back in it. And then again, very recently, look at it, Liverpool were in the final the last 2 years, Tottenham were in the final last year. So English football still kind of always there and thereabouts. And obviously, we had the whole domination of last season where the Europa League final was even Arsenal and Chelsea.
Yeah, we're doing that, but it's been done by Serie A teams previously in this decade as well. So it's not like we're unique in that regard in this period of time, because we've also had that thing where it's a rivalry between the Spanish league and our league. But back in the 90s, there was, what I'm trying to say, there was no rival to Serie A. There wasn't any league that could say, yeah, we're kind of, playing second, we're kind of competing with you at all. So it's almost like they had this total domination. Now, if Spanish football didn't exist, or if Spanish football, Real Madrid and Barcelona didn't have the purchasing power, then you could say, yeah, the Premier League would take over, like Serie A did. But right now, we're in a dynamic of the 2000s where Real Madrid became a powerhouse again, due to their political climate, where they managed to get a lot of money from the local government. When Barcelona became a power again. Even now, again, local government, Atletico Madrid kind of got given a new stadium, so now they spent 130 million on a new place, so they're rivaling Premier League teams now. So you've got three big teams in Spanish football rivaling the English teams, and it could say that they can have. I mean, Ronaldo going from United to Madrid. It's almost like they're saying, yeah, we got first dibs. Coutinho going from and Suarez going from Liverpool. It's almost like they're saying, yeah, we've got dibs on your players. So the dynamic of English football is not quite the same as it was for Italian football back then.
Fair enough. And you mentioned before Manchester United was your team of choice, but did you have an Italian team of choice back in the day, or do you have one now?
No, the thing is, I was always like a loyal football fan, so I was brought up on I just wanted English football to be good. I want English football teams to do well in European football. And it's always that kind of a myth where people say, yeah, I had an Italian team. They're always kind of flaky people. They're never kind of people who are genuine fans where they kind of listen to the games or watching, what's happening. No one really had it. You only really had people who supported the English team. So when you talk about teams having like an Italian team, I don't know anybody who has really properly had an Italian team at the time. So that kind of thing, I never really had it. But in terms of having a favorite team, I'm one of them people that kind of likes the underdog. So if I was to watch a game, yeah, I'd probably support Fiorentina or Parma, or one of the lesser teams. I'd want them to win the league as opposed to Milan dominating at the time.
And have you ever been to any Serie A games?
I kind of went late in the day, man. It was, remember 2005. 2005, I think. It's a case of I just said, well, I'm going to go by myself. It's a case of whenever you're waiting for people to do things with, or you got a particular passion, you've been waiting all the time. I said, I'm going to just go myself, do a little mini tour of Italy, because I had this kind of obsession with Italy. So I went and I landed in Rome, went to Napoli, went across the middle, Milan, Turin. So I kind of did like a mini tour of the country. Went to also remember Napoli as well. This is one thing that we're forgetting. Napoli again is back then again another small team of a poor region, but they had Maradona. They had the world's best player.
Yeah.
Fine. So and they won the set. So we got to and they who did they outbid? Barcelona. Again, it's not like it's the big wigs of Italian football out muscling the big wigs of other leagues. There's always these lesser teams as well. And the fact is that someone like a Maradona could say, yeah, I'll sign for Napoli. It wasn't like, no, and I'm going to, no. But nowadays, no, I'm going to sign for the biggest and the best. It goes up because they had that stature. So, yeah, going back to that, I went to Napoli. Remember I was in Rome, and then I went to the Stadio Olimpico. Because I wasn't, just because...
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
I was a bit of a loose end, and I went, and I turned up, and I couldn't get in, and there was all tickets and that. But walking around it, I know it wasn't like a big game, but walking around it, I said, hang on a minute, I'm going to miss an opportunity if I don't go to these stadiums. Because I'm actually one of my kind of like hobbies, if you like, is I'm a big fan of stadium architecture. I just love stadiums. I just love the whole kind of amphitheater ball where kind of you hold spectators, right? So I'm always kind of, whenever I go to a place, I check out. When I was in Japan and I had to go to see all the World Cup stadiums. When I'm around, I'm going to go and see the stadiums. In Seoul, I went to see the Olympic Stadium, which was a complete dive, man. It reminded me of like the worst stadium. It was like, how did this ever make it? That was definitely a political stunt to give Korea the 88 Olympics, because that Olympic Stadium was naff, right? But anyway, so I did go to Stadio Olimpico, and then I kind of planned on the BBC website, finding out when Milan or Inter were playing and when Juventus were playing, and I kind of, because I was only there for a week, I managed to go up
Yeah.
to the San Siro and watch them play Fiorentina, and then a few days later I went to
Nice one.
Juventus. Went to Juventus and went to see them play in the Champions League, play Rapid Vienna at the Delle Alpi, which never was going to be. They weren't big games, man, but it was just a case of right, I'm doing that fun thing, those tourist things. Well, I've kind of watched the games now in these stadiums.
But how were the games when you went to them? Like, what was the environment like? What was the quality of the football like?
The thing is, it's one of them things. Maybe it's a part of my personality where you kind of got this attitude when you want. Maybe it's my name, man. My name means prince, right? In Urdu or Persian, right? And maybe it's that thing where I want, like, I want to be seeing the best. So I want to see a final. I want to see two big teams go toe to toe, as opposed to watching. And when I was watching Fiorentina versus Inter, I kind of knew this wasn't like a big game because I just looked at the players, man. It wasn't even half decent.
Yeah.
Actually, a few years there from that, fair enough. Inter did win the Champions League when Mourinho came along, so fair enough that we did have a bare bones of a decent team. But it wasn't like I wasn't watching a big game, and plus Inter were dominating that game anyway, and it was quite an easy game. But I remember just like the atmosphere. I love the San Siro. I've been to it a couple of times now. I just love that stadium as like arena to watch football. And yeah, the Italian football fans. I just love the way, it's almost one thing I kind of recognised. Me being, on yourself being, off, you're being off-white, I'm being a bit more off-white from an Asian background. Obviously, in England, was me going to a football game, especially when I got all my Islamic clothes on, right? A lot of people say, look, is it going to be the best environment? And, it's all right, but, there's always going to, going to Bolton, if I go to Bolton Wanderers, man, I might have a few odd looks. Going to the biggest Man Cities and Man United, maybe not so. But there in Italy, I kind of realised it's Italian football. It's kind of, the nation's football where it transcends society. It's not like in England where you got working class and then you got the middle class like rugby or cricket. And then there's kind of got an environment where people only the working class and got this working class hooligan sometimes culture. But in Italy, no, everybody goes there. So you kind of feel like you're going to a very safe environment. So for me being like an Asian, I just felt 100% safe. Even when I've been to Spain watching games, felt 100% safe and no issues. You can just walk around, do what you want. It's more like a spectacle. It wasn't just kind of, this is just hardcore football fans that come here. Maybe at the Curva Sud or whatever, in the Curva Nud or whatever Nord they call it, they have the ultras, right? But the rest of the stadium, man, it's just all kind of friendly. And even the ultras, man, they're not, those ultras, right, they're kind of on the harmless side, man. You're never going to be, apprehensive. We even really see an ultras, like, so it's not like an English football fan or English football gatherings where you kind of might feel a bit, apprehensive. But you never, so it was definitely a friendly experience. I love the singing as well. They had these kind of songs, and it's a bit more melodic. It wasn't so much chanting, and you kind of get the impression when we obviously with the type of chanting in English is always kind of expletive ridden. You kind of got the impression these were just kind of chanting nice, decent songs about the team. There weren't much obscenity around, and I just love the songs at the end.
I think you might be a bit naive there.
They do have it, right? They do have it for sure, right? I get that. They do, scrub that. When it comes to certain times, they do have it, but I reckon Inter Fiorentina, man, it wasn't like a grudge match where they're going to swear. Well, when there's a reason to swear, when there's a proper rivalry, Milan derby, fair enough, you're going to get a few of that coming out. But in this game, it's all kind of friendly, man. It was like, why bother? I mean, even with England, when you have these two, when you have the lesser teams, say like Bolton playing like a bigger team, then the obscenity won't come from the bigger team because the bigger team are not really bothered about it. But the little team, they'll want their moment in the sun. They'll want their time. Say, we're at a patch now. We're going to make a big noise on. And even if we're going to lose, which we accept it, but we're going to sing, and we're going to say certain songs. Fiorentina fans, they were just quiet, man, just doing their own thing. They weren't, they weren't kind of, they never had any axe to grind. And then the songs at the end they played, I remember them Inter song, they did like a fun song they played at the end. I really liked him, and there was like everyone started singing it at the end when they won, and then the final whistle goes, and the kind of the team song comes on, and it's like this like now all the stadium started singing it. I thought it was a really fun atmosphere.
Nice one, man. And what did you think about Italy in general then, like besides the football?
What I find is another interesting point is another weird kind of thing is I remember in Milan, or was it Turin? I was walking around the centre and I came across, James Richardson, who used to present Gazzetta Football Italia.
Oh
He
yeah,
was the
yeah, of
main
course.
anchor. He was the main guy who presented the Gazzetta Football Italia. And I saw him just like doing this interview, right? So I went up to him. I go, how's it going? This is me, right? Not being out that much, right? Still being a bit young and a bit happy, a bit enthusiastic, right? But hey, how's it going, mate? Thinking, oh look, it's you, isn't it? It's you from Italian Night.
Yeah.
And the guy was always like a minor celebrity, thinking, oh, how's it? All right, mate. And I go, so what you doing here, mate? So I want to have a conversation with him. He goes, oh look, I'm doing Italian Night. I'm still doing Football Italia, but I'm doing it for the Bravo channel. I don't know if you know about the Bravo channel, but that's not a football channel. So it's kind of, but they must have bought the rights in about 2005 for Italian football. So that just tells you how much Italian football had diminished from the highs of Gazzetta Football Italia on Channel 4 on terrestrial TV, live TV on a Sunday. Now going to a very obscure, even Sky didn't buy it, even lesser satellite channels didn't buy it. It was Bravo that bought the rights.
Yeah.
And he was still doing his magazine show. It's almost like his career trajectory followed Italian football, because if Italian football was going up, he'd be going up, he'd be in demand. But then he went down and said, right, I'm going to present him on Bravo, doing the same stuff where he's like sitting around. That's one thing about the culture, man. You talk about the culture. I just loved it when I used to watch him, in the Italian football. He sits there with a cappuccino,
Yeah, always.
big flipping cake, right? Italian dessert, right? They know how to do the desserts, right? He's sitting there and he's got his Gazzetta Football, he's got his Corriere dello Sport, right? And that's something with Italy. They have got dedicated sports newspapers. We don't have them, which is strange because we've got a lot more sports going on. And Roy Hodgson once said, he was the manager of Inter in the late 90s. And he made this point once. He goes, when he came over to England, he goes, England, we've got all these different sports. But in Italy, sport is 90% football, 10% Ferrari. That's what sport is in Italy.
Yeah.
So you've got all these papers, Gazzetta dello Sport, Corriere dello Sport. They are football. They're filled 90% with football news. That's how much obsessed that country is with football, right? So then he'd be sitting there doing his little, having his little, review of the papers, right? So I remember seeing him there doing the same thing, and just this little memory. And going back to when you're talking about what did I think about Italy? Yeah, it was. I just loved the culture, watching it from afar. Yeah, I love the style of Italy. I was very much an Italian file, or whatever you call it. So the culture, the food, all that kind of thing that carried Italy along. I was a big fan of that. But going to a country, the thing is, you'll see some on TV. It's like when people see England on TV, and England, wherever you go in the world, and I've been fortunate enough to go to about 50 countries now. Whenever you mention England, everybody goes, "Oh, England, that's the place, right?" And then, because they've got this particular image of England in their mind, they're thinking London, Chelsea. I'm from Bolton.
Yeah.
Farnworth, right? That's my reality of England, and I try to say what you're thinking about England is a specific pocket that exists, right? And it's a kind of a touristy thing. The real England, right? These northern working towns, man, are not that. And that's the one thing I kind of realized about Italy as well. That kind of thing that you have on the TV, right? It's in little pockets, but because I've traveled around the country, man, I came across plenty of Boltons. I came across plenty of, like, this ain't working out. This is a big grim, isn't it? This part, of, this part of town, or this section. Like in Milan, right? If you go to certain sections, man, this graffitied over, like massive graffiti. I went there like a couple of 3 years ago when Madrid and Madrid played in the Champions League final. I drove over to Milan, and we were staying in a place, and it was full of graffiti because we had a car then, so we were driving around. And there were plenty of places you're like, this is a dive, isn't it? So it's not, this kind of romanticism and this image that you see on the TV. It's never reality. I think we're told that, but we have to go to places to realize, look, it's not exactly that. So if that myth kind of died on that holiday, and I was like, man, have I been, being brought back down to earth with the reality? Even with the people, remember on TV, you always see all the good-looking people, right? And Italians have this style, whether it's the females or the males, right? They got this kind of look about them going on, very stylish, handsome, or beautiful look. But when you go to the place, you'll see all the average people, right? And it's like, hang on a minute, you're not got all the beautiful people, the image that you see on TV where everybody is like, the optimized. Even when you're watching like a Pakistani soap opera, my mum watches a lot of them now, and they've got all the beautiful people on, all the handsome people on. Yeah, they do exist in every country, and when you put, style them out, man, you got some people who are top level people, right? But we go to Pakistan, you go to Pakistan, I'll go to Pakistan, and our image is slightly different. So that's what happens when you go to a place itself, right? It's the reality of it dawns where it's not, the myth isn't there. So I came back from the holiday thinking very much in one level disappointed, but another level finding it funny that I ever had this kind of ever held that place in such high regard.
Well, I'm surprised you came back from Italy being disappointed, because when I've only been once, and I went to Rome when I went, and funnily enough, I actually went to see Lazio when I was there. It was in the 2017-18 season. It was like a nothing Europa League game against Vitesse Arnhem from Holland, and they drew 1-0. It was a proper boring game. Stadio Olimpico, the Curva Nord was like bouncing, but there was only like 8,500 people in there. It was like a huge game. But the opposite of you, I absolutely loved it when I was there. Even though it was a nothing game, the stadium was mostly empty. I absolutely loved being there and being able to see the famous Lazio live in front of me. But yeah, I loved Rome as well. I thought Rome was fantastic. I loved all the old architecture, like the Colosseum and the Pantheon and all that stuff. You got the Trevi Fountain, you got the Spanish Steps. There's so much there to see.
Vatican. There is. Again, my obsession in Italy not only extends to modernly, it's ancient Rome as well. I was really massive interest in ancient Rome as well. So I did love Rome. Don't get me wrong, there's parts of it, I absolutely adored, right? And especially, and I would recommend anybody who's listening to this, right, if you ever get time, near Rome, Naples is only like an hour or two away on the train, and near Naples is Pompeii. So you've probably heard of Pompeii, the preserved city Roman city that got preserved under volcanic ash. And I went there, yeah, and I still, even though my laptop got smashed up, right, I still uploaded some pictures onto Facebook. Thank you, Facebook, for preserving some of my memories. And I'm there, right, in Pompeii, and that was one of the biggest, buzzes I've had watching a monument.
Really?
Because it's not like in Rome where you get to see the amphitheater, the Colosseum, you see it, and it's in front of you, right, and you can go in and out, but then you're out. Then you're out and you're walking on the road again. Then you go see the Vatican, and then I remember seeing the catacombs and the Trevi Fountain. You're in Pompeii. You're walking around on foot a whole village, which has been preserved. So you come up to a little amphitheater, which was the main kind of, if you like, it's like the local village football team would play nowadays equivalent, but back then it's a little amphitheater for the players and etc. That's it. You walk down, you see somebody's house. And they say this house was like a peasant house. Then you walk next to it and you go, oh, this was like the brothel, by the markings. And then you walk down and you see another house, another place. It's a preserved, functioning town. And each point, your eyes open up and you open up a bit more, and then you go, oh, this is that, and you're walking around it and you're thinking, man, I'm walking, my foot are on the same feet that people would have walked like 3,000 years ago, going to the same shop, going to that house. Yeah. That's why it kind of fascinated me, because I'm a big fan of Roman history like that. It was a whole town, the whole village is preserved. And so that's why I was fascinated by that.
We should have done a bloody Pompeii podcast, never mind Football Italia. I think Pompeii is where your true passion lies.
I think what it comes across as, I had very high opinions of a place, so they got lowered a lot. It's not like I stopped liking it. I still like it, but I mean, even now, I still love it, because I would say Italian fashion, the style of Italian designers is still better than anybody else, and their food is better than anybody else. And driving from 3 years ago, we drove from Bolton all the way to Milan via France or via Europe. We kind of drove down, right? And France is a place, right? Again, there's parts of France, which, obviously Paris, and then you get the south of France, the French Riviera, which kind of borders north of Italy as well, which is another beautiful place, right? It's kind of renowned. But drive through the middle of France. No, we had to stop up in Nancy, right? Place where Tony Cascarino played. That's why I know that place in town. In the industrial, we've got the industrial north of England. They've got an industrial centre. And the industrial centre is far worse than the Bolton equivalent or the Burnley equivalent. It was a dive. It was bad. Driving on the motorways, we were driving on and goes, man, these all look at the motorway barriers. They're all rusted. They're all broken, right? And then we walked. We'd be driving. Then we'd have to stop in Nancy in this kind of mall, right? Because we wanted to get some food. I mean, walking around this supermarket, and it's the most unhealthiest people buying the most unhealthiest food, living the most unhealthiest lives, right? And I'm thinking, mate, this is supposed to be France. They're supposed to do stuff better than us because that's what the French always tell us. And we're like, hang on a minute, we're two second-generation immigrants from England, right, from Pakistan in England, and we're not really impressed by this, right? And then we had to eat some food at the canteen, right? And it was the most horriblest food, right? I'm thinking, French people. You go on so much of how your cuisine is so amazing, right? I don't know how to eat this, right? Fair enough, I'm going to eat it because I'm hungry and I'm a fatty anyway, so I'll just stuff it down. When we hit Italy, right? We hit an Italian service station. I've never seen such dedication to food that I've seen in Italian service stations. These are motorway service stations. These are not restaurants. These are not malls. I'd go in and me and my wife, and guess what? They got a bakery in here. They're freshly breaking food in the service station, making these the most amazing croissants, right? They had fillings in, right? And we said, mate, they've taken the French staple of a croissant, and they've absolutely
perfected it.
Yeah, made it five. Like if you put a French croissant next to an Italian croissant, there's no comparison. The Italians have just taken it to a different level, and it wasn't even expensive. We're from England. We do live in an expensive, country. An Italian service station, I go, that's a value, isn't it? And we're like eating away, man. They're all this nice food, and they take such pride in it. That's the one thing about Italians, right? Food, clothes, they take pride in that. And there's definitely even now, it might be low in my estimation terms. It's not as fascinating as it was, but that's the same thing every country. I mean, I remember I've got an Italian friend. He spent 7 years in Pakistan, so he's fluent in Punjabi and Urdu and Arabic, and he lives in Cyprus, but he was an Anglophile. He goes, I used to love England growing up. So he was kind of role reversal, but he goes, he saw England on TV and he goes, whoa, this is fascinating. I go, fair enough, man. I never knew England had such a high reputation in Italy, but it does. Even when Fabio Capello got the manager's role in England, I think all the Italian press were like, wow, the home of football has taken on our manager, which was surprising because from my point of view, it's like, well, Italy, you're better than football than us, but fair enough. So then he went over to England. He did his master's and his PhD in London, and he just kind of the same thing. He goes, I went there expecting, he had this opinion. When you have the all kind of people, the American image of all, upper class, middle class people speaking very politely,
yeah, sure,
and very formally, and have a nice cups of tea. And he had that image. And he goes, I'm in university, right? And he goes, I'm like, there's a lecturer there, and he's at a decent university as well. And he goes, just the way how people interacting, like calling the lecturer by his first name and all. And I'm thinking, but I thought you guys did politeness. I thought that's what you do. And I goes, I'm walking around London, I'm thinking, this isn't the London. I go, yeah, you're right. It's not what you're going to see. If you ever go to London, you're not going to, this image of England and, the kind of, the upper classes might have reserved it. Maybe some of the middle classes, but in general, man, it's just not, it's quite rough and ready, England around the edges. So he came away from England being very disappointed, thinking this is not what I expected. But so it's on that level when you have an image based, which is not based on reality, but based on what you've been told, you're gonna be a bit disappointed when you hit that place. That's the thing about Italy. You're just slightly disappointed, but it's to be expected.
I think it might be a personality thing because I really enjoyed Rome when I went. You go knowing that nowhere's perfect, and regardless of where you go, it's not going to be perfect. But it's got certain high points, and as long as those high points are high, then the rest can kind of coast you through. But what did you you said you mentioned the food in the service stations. That's one of the things that I really enjoyed about Rome was the pizza, the pasta, the gelato. Yeah. Oh my god, the food was so good.
Definitely. I mean, again, I've been to Rome twice now. I've been to Milan and I've been 3 times, which is of all the European nations, the most I've been to. So I still like Italy. Let's put that in perspective, right? I still like it, but I never had, and I was never a big fan of France. I've been to France a couple of times now. I won't ever go again. I don't even like France. I don't like the way they behave. I don't like the way they're very arrogant people, the French, and they kind of got this arrogance, right? But it's not. They can't really back it. I mean, when they say, look, we'll back up our food, look, I've eaten at their places, right? I go, look, yeah, anyone can say about their best places, compare the best, so we're good. But it's when you compare what the average person will go into, like an average restaurant or an average kind of place.
Sure.
And their kind of average eateries are crap, man. I've driven throughout the country, right? Never that impressed. I've been in Spain. I like Spain a lot. I mean, I like Spain because I got family there. I like the weather. I like that. But it's always kind of, yeah, it's Spain. I mean, they've got. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm gonna be honest, man. I like Spain, but they got some of the worst food. It's horrible. When you eat out, it's just horrible fried stuff a lot, and they really can't really cook food that well. I'm just being honest with the place, right? I'll definitely go there again, maybe for some football, and I just like the Spanish people because they're kind of friendly. But it's got, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna put credit. But Italy, I'll say it from now. If I'm gonna go to Italy, I know I'm gonna eat well. I know I can walk into a random pizzeria, and I know he's gonna pull something in front of my place that's gonna be tasty. That's one of the things about Italy is the desserts. I love my desserts as well. Again, they're gonna have some really beautiful desserts. So they take pride in that, and fashion as well. I just love the way that people, they know what fashion is. They come across well. So it's not me putting it down on it. I will still go again, but I really elevated it to a very high level where I said, this, and it comes down to when, the reality of places is, I've been to America now, right? And, every place, right, it's not what you see on TV. And coming back to Italian football, I also think in hindsight, I overhyped it. The thing is, in the 80s, Italian football also had the best players, like Maldini, for instance. He was World Football of the Year. He was, and then best English players went to Italy as well. They had Ian Rush, etc. So they had the best players in the 80s, but English football used to dominate the European Cup or the Champions League in the 80s. So you had Forest winning it, Villa winning it, obviously Liverpool won it a few times. So it kind of shows that English football did compete, even though it might have had lesser players. In the 90s, unfortunately, because of that ban, the ban took away English clubs' access. So it made English football go down a few. English football needed about 5-6 years to get back up to the speed of European football, and they were just a bit behind everybody else. That's why English football was so rubbish in the 90s, I think, because of the ban, as opposed to not having the best players or having a very inferior league. So if you look at those kind of stats in the 70s and 80s, English football teams, they did do really well in Europe, and they competed against the best Italian teams. That's one of the reasons why I think maybe I overhyped it. And they definitely had the best players, there's no question about that. But in terms of, for instance, I'll talk about the stadiums. After Italia Night, you watched all the big games, and you watched all the big stadiums full. And then, but if you take away Stadio Olimpico, San Siro, Stadio delle Alpi, right? After that, they don't have any big stadiums. They have like kind of stadiums up to a capacity of about 30,000, maybe 35. So in that regard, English football has got more consistently bigger stadiums. They might not have the biggest, right? But then that's also a case of because the big stadiums in Italy are owned by the local authority. San Siro, Stadio Olimpico, Stadio delle Alpi are not owned by the clubs, so they're kind of multi-use stadiums. And they won't have full capacity. The thing is with Premier League football was, even throughout the 90s, full capacity. It might have been inferior, it might have been the best players, but you always got full stadiums.
That fan power is still there.
Fan power is still there, but if you look in Italian football, even in the 90s, when you go away from the big games, then the San Siro would not have been sold out. Delle Alpi would not have been sold out. Stadio Olimpico would not have been sold out when a team like, say, Brescia came along. And then when you had other teams, for instance, maybe Atalanta playing Brescia or Sampdoria or Parma, they again wouldn't really sell out playing these kind of matches. In terms of the fan power and the passion of the fans, again, English football would have won over that as well. And another reason why I would say it wasn't as good is in terms of when you look at the spectacle of the football. Now, I'm going to be honest, I used to sit watching Italian football, Football Italia, and waiting for the big games to go on. It's pre-internet, so you never knew which game was going to be on. And when it was like a lesser team playing, right, I'd get bored. I know I'd get bored. When it was Milan playing against, say, Fiorentina or Parma, you'd kind of get a bit bored because the football was not exciting. And that's one thing that was always leveled at Italian football. Is it interesting? Is it exciting?
Too defensive.
English, too defensive. It's hard to score. People are playing it around, but they're technically very good, but not doing much with it.
They
Whereas
say, don't
English,
they, in Italian football that 0-0 is the perfect score, which is just doesn't make sense, does it?
yeah, well, it kind of makes sense from like a defensive point of view, but from like a spectator's point of view, when you had the Premier League, man, you had so many exciting matches, end-to-end stuff. Now, one thing that Ruud Gullit, I remember coming over when he did for Chelsea in the late 90s, and he was saying, yes, it's exciting, but there's more mistakes. That's why it's exciting. And I kind of think, well, is that a bad thing? Because to make a mistake, you've got to take a risk as well. Italian football just seems risk averse. So they're not kind of put themselves in those positions where they're taking those chances. So and I'll be perfectly honest, I'll be watching the games, right? And I remember, I'll be perfectly honest, really wanting to get into the game because, look, it's like you're being fed the best players there. It's like having a really good meal in front of your face, but not feeling hungry to eat it because you don't quite like the cuisine because you don't feel fine. It's that kind of thing.
The ingredients are all there. The ingredients are all there, but it's not the right meal.
Yeah, exactly right. The ingredients were all there. I said, I should be enjoying this more. I should be really getting into this, right? But stuff's not really happening as much, and I'm not really seeing, these players. You're not really seeing the best out of these players because of how how the tactics are being set out. So I remember thinking that as well. In hindsight, if you got to be fair when you put that appraisal there, but in terms of what I will say is when I watched goal of the month or goal of the season, Premier League versus Serie A in the 90s, there is no comparison. That's one thing I remember watching at the time. I used to love watching Gazzetta Football Italia probably more than the live games because Gazzetta Football Italia is a magazine show. They'll give you a roundup, so they give you the brief highlights. And when you watch the highlights or the goals going in, man, they were like really skillful, amazing goals. When the Premier League, it was this kind of, the goal of the month would be, maybe like a long shot. And it was like a straight shot kind of thing. It wasn't a skillful. It wasn't like a team effort that you get Italy. So when Italian football in a highlights package would have gone, would have been, when you watch some in a highlights package, it'd be like amazing. But the full 90 minutes, the spectacle wasn't as good as you would have hoped. That's why I think maybe in hindsight, if I go back, maybe Italian football wasn't as good as I thought it was in the 90s.
So which players then, if someone's sat here listening to this and they're thinking, right, after this I want to go onto YouTube and I want to research some of the players, what players would you recommend that people go out and search from this period of time from Italian football?
So like Batistou or Ronaldo.
Sure.
Because then you're seeing that guy, come up. Zidane's out. I remember Zidane was there as well, one of the best players in the world. Maybe showing a close up of him. They released about 10, 15 years ago. They released a film called Zidane, which is basically just showing him.
Yeah.
He was in Madrid at the time, Real Madrid at the time. So in terms of players, I think Ronaldo was probably one of my most favorite players in terms of watching him play. Batshuayi was more like a power play, just banging the goals. You had that's what kind of say. I mean, even I'd say people like Ruud Gullit was it. Again, I think there's a side of me that now looks back thinking maybe I overhyped certain players. Maybe Ruud Gullit wasn't as good as we thought he was, because there was definitely a tendency among Italian. Remember, we talked before about English people of always downplaying how good they were and upplaying how good the other countries were. So you'd always be there, and part of the hype was when I'm watching commentators comment and thinking, oh, this is Ruud Gullit, magnificent player. And when you're young, you don't know much about football, you don't know much about tactics, you don't know much about how you can spot a good player or not. It'd be more about what you're being told, and that'd be your conversation you have with your mates. It's not what you saw, it's what you've been told, and then you try to make out as your own conversation. So it'd be like watching Ruud Gullit, be like, he's an amazing player. Why? Because all the TV says he's an amazing player. If you watch Ruud Gullit and look like a show of Ruud Gullit, you'd think nowadays, he's all right. I mean, wouldn't say he's spectacular. Maybe the reputation is bigger than the actual name. His name is Van Basten. Yeah, he's a good player, but if you're going to compare, I'm going to say something. Was Van Nistelrooy just as good then? Bergkamp, was he as good? Van Basten obviously retired early, so has this myth about him. Rijkaard, he's a fullback. How much are you going to watch from a fullback? So even though that Milan team that dominated European football, the backbone was this Dutch, and everyone says the Dutch backbone. I'm kind of struggling to see whether they're that amazing. Was it just the fact that it was a Dutch trio, putting into this, and it made a nice story? Again, when you look at the other players like Klinsmann, yeah, good player he was when he came to England, yeah, good player he was, but was it, look at his highlight reel, was he really? Again, I'm kind of going back and thinking, yeah, they had good players, right?
I
They
think
had
that's
certain
what we
players that
do, though,
stood
isn't
out.
it? I think that's kind of what we do with things from our youth is we remember them with rose-tinted glasses a lot of the time, and especially with something like football. Over the years, things do progress and get better. That's why, like, obviously Ronaldo and Messi are so much better than players from previous years because physically they're so much fitter and better and stuff like that. There's other arguments to be had around it, but things do progress. But when do you think then Italian football kind of went downhill? Because obviously it had all those superstars in the early to mid 90s, and then it's kind of died off now to the point where it doesn't really have that same star power anymore. They've got Ronaldo, but besides that, it's not to that level. What do you think it was that made it fall off, and when do you think that was?
Fell off because the reason why Italian football was so good, because the purchasing power and the spending power of Italian clubs was far better, far higher than any other nation. And it kind of fell off when that kind of backing they got fell off. So a lot of the teams, I remember Parma, a subsequent team that had been relegated back. But just look at the players. They had Crespo up front, they had Chiesa, they had Veron, then they had Dino Baggio, Lilian Thuram at the back, Fabio Cannavaro, Gianluigi Buffon. They got Cannavaro was the Italian captain who lifted the World Cup. Buffon, we all know about him. Thuram was one of the best right backs, central defenders. Crespo, Veron. So this is the Parma team, right? That kind of team on that level, right? Again, if you look at the amount of money they had, yeah, and the money they got, Parma was from Parmalat, the milk giant. Is in
Mm-hmm.
the kind of the big milk producers, the big dairy producers. It was kind of vanity projects, saying not vanity projects, but it's kind of because Italian football, it's not like English football. But English football has definitely got a working class root. Italian football kind of transcends society. So to have your local team and spend money on your local team and not get an investment, not see an investment is a good thing, is a positive thing. So like Palmer, that was a company that started off in Palmer. They said, yeah, we'll spend a few millions from our profit to promoting our local, team. It didn't seem like it seemed like a normal thing. They promoted it. Then you had the Gnelli family of Juventus, owners of Ferrari. They said, right, we're going to promote our team. You had Berlusconi, the big prime minister, media mogul of
Mm-hmm.
Milan. You had of Inter. You had the big the family that just sold out. The kind of wealthy family. I've forgotten the name now. They had it for so many decades. They owned that. They were own. They were the Italian football didn't generate money. It was basically a way in which rich companies or rich people could spend their money, and they did it. It's like with other countries spending different. Arabs will spend a lot of money on horses. They will just want. That's the kind of way in which they'll spend it. So the Italians would obviously spend it on the football teams. That's where the purchasing power went. And then when the Italian economy in the late 90s, the wholesale through hit. Parmalat went bust. You had Ferrari pulling back. You had you had I think Cheerio was a big tin food company. They were back in that till the time. They all kind of went through the recession. And the first thing that happens in a recession, obviously, you come back on all your expenses, your needless spending, and sport is something that's going to be the first thing you're going to cut back and say, we're not going to spend any money on this on this vanity project anymore. So that's when it kind of happened, when they lost that kind of that whole fell out the Italian economy, and it still hasn't recovered now. I've no idea why no one's kind of reinvesting again. Maybe I've something I've no idea, but there's definitely in the 80s and the 90s being pushed towards the investment. Napoli, if you look at it, it was Maradona was all kind of, they say, by mafia money. That's another issue. They've got
Yeah.
obviously they've kind of cleaned up the mafia side, so no longer the mafia has an influence where they can't buy in players anymore. So there's a number of reasons why they no longer. But maybe even culturally, maybe there's been a cultural shift where they think we're not going to spend money on football anymore and culture. We're not going to do that. So maybe that's a reason. But the Italian football itself, in terms of the revenues, they don't get much revenues anyway. Never have had much revenues because the stadiums aren't full. We've kind of established that they've not got stadiums in which they own themselves. so they can't generate money. So again, they kind of shared Stadio Olimpico shared, San Siro shared. So it's not, they don't own the stadium, and that's always been a model in which English teams always said we need to own your own stadium to get bigger revenues. So the teams are always handicapped. They've always needed a windfall of money coming in. If that stopped now for whatever reason, then the teams, they do not have the money to kind of spend. So that's why Italian football now, they won't spend the money because they can't generate. The clubs themselves can't generate the money.
Yeah, I think
I want to talk about some fun facts. I've got some fun facts written down about watching Gazzetta Football Italia. I remember another thing about sometimes when you have the other is always going to be something. When you realise that, because I'm a big fan of the Italian language as well. I just love the way it kind of rolls, how they speak. It's like, hey, the way that it kind of rolls. Hey, they're probably just saying like, hey, get me a cup. Hey, would you get me a cup of tea? But it just sounds a bit more poetic, right? And even when the nicknames of the teams, right? So you got the Rossoneri. Now that sounds like that. With us, we got the Blues, right? We got the Trotters, right?
Yeah.
We've got the Reds, right? We got, and you got the Rossoneri, Nerazzurri, right? So again, I used to think, man, they got such amazing, beautiful nicknames. Why we just call the Blues for? Why we just call the Reds for? And then you realise that Rossoneri just means the Reds. The Nerazzurri means the Blacks and the Blues.
Yeah.
It's the same nickname, just based on the colour of the strip. But it sounds so much better because the language sounds so much better. So again, it's when you don't know the language, you just think, oh, it just sounds so amazing. But so the nicknames are kind of Bianconeri for Juventus as well. Again, they're just based on the colours, just that the colours sound a bit different. So the nicknames are just the same. And then again, when they talk about some fun facts, I remember watching Football Italia, and everybody used to think that the opening credits when the guy goes "Go Lazio," everybody think it's "Go Lazio," and everybody say, "Why is he saying "Go Lazio" for?" And then I remember watching me being a stalwart of Italian football. I remember watching the magazine show, and this is when you got fun facts and you try out on your friends and you correct them. I remember James Richardson saying, "Look, it's not Go Lazio, it's Go Lazzo," as in what an amazing goal that is. So that cleared that one up. And also, one fun fact again is this kind of when it's always a case of who's a football fan in the room and who's just gassing out and saying, I want to be a football fan now. You know, when you have flaky football fans or fair weather fans, and you've got your real hardcore fans. One thing is always Milan, Inter Milan, right? The names of the teams. So being a football fan, you know that AC Milan is called Milan. They call the team, the name is Milan. It's AC as in FC, so no one really says the AC. But outside of Italian football, you would say AC Milan because you pronounce what's on the screen. And Inter Milan are called Internationality of Milan. Milan's not part of the name. It's like Everton. It's like saying Everton of Liverpool, right? You don't really say the Liverpool part, or you don't say the Milan part. You just say Inter. So when you say, for instance, the derby is Milan versus Inter, and there's always a case of when you would say it to people and they'd say, which one? That's always a way we can always catch out a person who doesn't know much about football. Back in the day, I was old enough now, but when also Calcio, I never knew that Calcio was Italian for football, because every other nation calls it.
Oh, come on, you didn't know that?
Every other country calls it football. They call it something like that. But in Italy, they call it Calcio now. I'm being perfectly honest with you, right? Again, Michael, a little silly story about my trip, man. But I was there outside San Siro. I remember watching Inter play and queuing up. And I was talking to a couple of football fans. And back then, I'm also a Bolton fan. And Bolton were doing well, and they were saying, so who do you support? Back then, I'd never say Man United, because Man United was always like an obvious one to say. So I'd always say, yeah, Bolton, because that's my hometown. And Bolton were about fourth in the league. And it was... Football put Bolton on the map. So whenever you used to say you're from Bolton, I've been in China to say I'm in Bolton. They've known what Bolton is. I've been in all kinds of strange countries, and Bolton has been put on the map by the football team of the time, right? And I remember the Italian guy who's a Inter Milan thinking, yeah, Bolton, they're up to fourth now. And I was thinking, whoa, man, this guy, what Inter Milan, this big team, knows about Bolton Wanderers. I remember asking him, so this word on the stadium, I don't quite get it. Calcio, what is it, Calcio? He goes, it's football. I go, no, it's football, what's it mean? Because it's football. I said, what does calcio mean? He goes, it means football. And I'm thinking, shit, have I never even known that calcio means football? I couldn't get it round. But I said, but isn't football football? He goes, no, mate, listen. The Italian for football is calcio. I go, right, fair enough, sounds nothing like it, but fair enough. So I only found out there, asking this Inter fan outside the stadium what calcio was. He must have thought I'm a big Italian football fan if you don't know what the Italian for football is. I remember
just to make yourself feel better, I've only known that since I was about 10 years old, so I mean, we're about evens on that one.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, there's probably a reason why you found out.
There was. It was. I can tell you the exact reason. FIFA 99. For some reason, they didn't have the rights to Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo's name. So on the game, he was just called Calcio.
And then how did you know if calcio meant football then?
First, we were like, why is his name not on there? Second, we were like, okay, we figured out it was the legal reason. Then we was like, okay, what does calcio mean? Then we just figured it out. This is pre-internet days as well, so it wasn't as easy as just Googling it. We had to, do a bit of research. But yeah, we found that out.
I had going back now. I've never really got into games for whatever reason, but I did have ISS 64 on Nintendo 64.
Oh yeah.
And they never had the rights. But the good thing was they just made up names that sounded a bit like it. So they'd have I can't even remember them now yet, but it might have been like
Ryan Greggs and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly that. Instead of Ronaldo, it'd be Ronaldo.
Paul Scales that's what they did. Stuff like that.
Yeah. So didn't they do that? Or was that too close at the time? They couldn't do it. I mean, it was at the time. I remember it from that period of the early 90s. It was gamers definitely had like a sense of humor, like the gaming programmers and all that kind of environment. So doing Kickoff, I'm going back now. Kickoff was a very bad game.
I had Kickoff 3 for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I think the Super Nintendo version might have been half decent, but we're going back to Amiga, Atari ST days, and people will go on of my generation how amazing it was. And I'm going to tell you blank, Sensible Soccer, I'm telling you blank, it's pants. It is absolute pants, right? You've got to get to the Super Nintendo era when you start having some decent simulations about football. But I mean, I'm talking about like Nintendo's ISS 64. I recently just saw my Nintendo 64 online for 100 quid. It just lined out and said I'm never going to play again. But in the times I did go back to playing it, it's still a mint game. It's still as playable. It was like an arcade quality, arcade type of, and it's still. I would say still in terms of a casual gamer, it's better than FIFA series. It's better than what the FIFA series are all kind of a bit more technical, yeah. But in terms of gameplay and on the arcade feel, ISS 64 had it still, and it still has it. If you still play that game now, it's still a good game, right? But before then, before 94, man, all these like I don't know what perspective you call them. When you're looking down, it's not a side on view, but you're looking down on the heads of players.
Yeah, like bird's eye view.
Bird's eye view, right? And then it's horrible. I mean, Sensible Soccer had it. I mean, it's playable, man, but they're terrible games, man.
Yeah, I hated the bird's eye view games. But just to bring it back to the naming rights thing, on Football Manager this year, they couldn't get the rights to Juventus. So on the Football Manager game this year, they called Zebre.
That's terrible, man. I mean, there was more funny about. Why I mentioned Kickoff was they had some really funny names. They had some really funny names back then about. They take a mickey out of the name. I suppose you can't do now because there'd be some complaints. And
I remember Dennis Irwin was Dennis Irwine. I definitely remember that one.
I don't know if you remember Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge, but you had like Gerhard Berger with Gerhard Banger and Nigel Mainsail, and like they were like Mickey takes out of the names, right? But I remember playing FIFA, was it? And they didn't have the rights to the teams, and Bolton was called Middlebrook Football Club.
Oh, that would have been Pro Evolution Soccer, that one.
Pro Evolution, obviously, they definitely didn't shell out for the money, but I think they had better gameplay. But the point was, they became very bland. They couldn't take the mickey anymore. So what is Middlebrook? Oh, we can whip from home. So we know the stadium is built in the site called Middlebrook. Such a bland name, right? And if you don't know, you're not going to know it's Bolton. You're going to know who the hell is Middlebrook, man. It sounds more like Middlesbrough, right? But yeah, the naming rights or the naming culture went from being fun and Mickey take it right down to just being, look, we can't say the names, so you're just going to do some random stuff. That makes sure we're not going to get into trouble.
I
That's what the
just
fun.
remembered out of nowhere, but didn't something happen with you and a ticket tout outside the Champions League final?
Yeah, I was going to come up to that, but I was going to come up to first about the Lazio. There's a little me and Italian football. Just before we went to the stadium, because we drove down from England all the way through France to Milan, and I wear my religious clothes normally, right? You probably never see me, I don't know, because you'll never see me gig. Other than the time when we met outside Manchester City Stadium, I had my clothes on then. But normally I wear my religious clothes, my hat and my kind of thing. And we were driving down, and then and under the thing is about the jubba is I always have like football shirts on under, so if ever I get hot and I take my jubba off, and it's always people looking around, the guy's got like a football shirt on. They kind of probably thinking I'm kind of a religious kind of I don't know, imam or something, but the guy's a big football fan, as most of us are. So I remember it being really hot, and I was there, took my jubba off, and underneath I had a Lazio shirt on. And again, I say the team, I wear the Lazio, I had a few Lazio shirts simply because I like the colour. I'm basing it. That's what I'm based now, football. I've gone past that stage of, I must wear a shirt with some affiliation. It's based around the colour now. And a lot of people think, you support that team. I go, no, I like the colour. That's it. I like this part of it. That's how much I like with the football now. And we got to the checkpoint, right? One of the checkpoints. And I remember all the Italian, because we had to get out, right, show our passports, and I get out with and I remember there's 3 Italian checkpoint guards staring at me thinking, why is that religious Muslim guy wearing the team of the fascists of Italy? It was the two things you equate. Because Lazio is the fascists. It's like, that don't make sense, and everybody knows about it.
He's probably tannoying over to his boss going, hey, we've got a real nightmare scenario over here. Lazio teamed up with the Muslims.
He's gone mental, mate. Teaming up together, you've got the fascists and the ISIS coming together. It must be the worst nightmare. But I remember one of them just smiling away, because they all know about, one thing about Italian people is they all know everybody inside has got some understanding about football. It's not like England where some people just don't like it. So they will know, Lazio, we know Lazio represent the fascists, right? And then I remember one of them just smiling at me, look at the image, man, the guy's got a big beard, he's a Muslim, brown, right?
Yeah.
And then he's got this Lazio shirt on it. It's kind of been like, maybe you didn't know that, maybe I didn't know the history of that, but that was quite fun, me just walking around with that shirt. Because that's one thing about Italy, I remember no one really in terms of seriousness, right? It's not really, maybe when you get with an ultra and you're in that environment, but around the country you can do it, it's all a bit of fun, man. A lot of people, we can take football outside the, not away from the stadium. It's a bit of fun, and I'm going back to the Italian football. That's the one thing about Italian. I like Italian touts. Strange comment to make, a bit controversial, but it's like I remember World Cup in 2006. So that was the year after, and I went over to Germany. Again, I'm just going as a fan, right? But I've got obviously this attitude of a prince where I don't want to watch rubbish games. So I was just going for the atmosphere, and I went over where the game. I flew over Cologne. That's it. There's an EasyJet flight from Liverpool to Cologne. Yeah, Cologne. Yeah, and then Cologne to Dortmund was like a little train ride away.
Yeah.
So I was in Dortmund, and there's going to be like the semi-final, or I was just going for the atmosphere, the fun packs. And FIFA definitely build up all the fun packs and all that kind of stuff. So I said, yeah, go along. I'm going along, and when you get a bit bored, thinking, man, I'm just fucking bored here, man. There's nothing much happening. I feel like a bit like, after the Lord Mesh show or that anti-climate, I'm kind of watching somebody in a restaurant eat the food.
Yeah.
So I said, right, I'll walk over towards the stadium. I was in. Remember this? I never kind of. I'm coming from a background where, like, now it's a bit different. Back then, I was thinking like people don't do certain things, or look, there's always kind of not being so confident in life, right? You're traveling by yourself. You're like, not traveled that many countries at that time, not knowing what the do's and the don'ts are, right? But I remember there's a guy's a face painter on the train, and he had a ticket in his hand. And I was thinking, what's he doing with the ticket? And then he sold it to this guy. And I said, man, is he selling tickets? He says, what? So I went to a face painting guy, just wondering, because there's another thing we talk about TV and myths. Whenever you'd watch the TV show, and again, when I watch the news now, the next World Cup's on, they'll come on, and it'll be one stupid England guy thinking, and for TV they got to find the stupidest guy. They go, so how much are the tickets going for? Because I've been offered a ticket for €3,000 fucking ridiculous that is. And you're thinking, and you're watching, man, that's how much tickets are going for. 3,000 euros. Then another guy come on, I've been offered 5,000 euros. Thinking 5,000? That's how much they're going for. Not knowing yet that TV, they got to pick out the most stupidest people. It's like whenever you watch those Vox Pops and they like ask a question to the guy in the street. So they go, so what's the capital of France? And the guy goes, oh, what is it, Madrid, or you say something like Scunthorpe. Not knowing, right, they've asked 100 people beforehand. They've all said Paris. They've had to wait for the 100th person to come up with a stupid, and that's the guy they show on TV. That's how TV kind of works. So it's all these kind of myths, right? So I was definitely aware, oh, look, all these tickets costing £1,000. I can't afford £1,000, even less than that. You know, it was a semi-final, Germany versus Italy, in Germany. So I was certain I couldn't afford it, and plus I was young enough. Then I said, I don't particularly want to go and have a conversation with that tout. So how much is your ticket? Oh, man, I don't want to be, you know, I was a bit young and a bit naive, man. In my early 20s, right? Traveling by myself, didn't know what to do. But so I remember the face paint, and I said, oh, so how much? And he goes, mate, I just had he didn't speak English, but I kind of got the impression he had one ticket. Then I turn up at the stadium, and there's all this kind of ticket trade going on. And I go up, and there's an English guy there selling his ticket. I said, so how much is your ticket for? He goes, yeah, I've just got one ticket. I'm selling it for like £700 or something. I go, okay, it's not £3,000. You know, it's expensive, but it's not what I've been told, like 5,000. I go, oh yeah, fair enough. So I was there really early and walking around, just getting an atmosphere and everything. And then Italian dude turns up, right, this little guy. And people just walking around, and he I've got tickets with me. And he pulls out a wad of tickets. Now I'm telling you, like a wad of, it was like 1,000 tickets there in his hands, right? And yeah, and the thing with this, you always get, you know, the touts, the old like English touts, which I just can't deal with. I can't deal with the average scouse or the English. Oh, I want a ticket. I remember watching the NFL game. I'd already got a ticket, and I remember asking the touts. I just have, you know, these Cockney touts. How much you get a ticket? No, I'm selling it for that. And I said, so what happens when it's time for the game, and you can't sell it? What happens? He goes, I just rip it up, mate. Like very attitude. No, I don't sell it under face value. I don't sell it for this price. I go. You can't really deal with that type of person, right? But these European ticket types, I find they're kind of happy for a deal. So I went up to him, he goes, how much are you selling it for? And he goes, you know, oh, I'll sell it for this, you know, in euros. And it kind of worked out like €350, right? Mm-hmm. And I go, hang on a minute, that's reasonable. That isn't even. I said, hey, what's your least price you can do it for? Oh, I think it's 400. He goes, I'll do it for 350 or something, you know, we're typing it out on the mobile phone back then. And he goes, I'll do it for that. And I go, that's reasonable. I can't complain at that price. And then I look at where the situation, where it was, and it's in the corner, right? Second tier, right? And the thing is, I've been to a lot of football games, so I've been to a lot of stadiums, so I can figure out what the view's going to be. And the corner place always gets derided by people, yeah, but sometimes one of the best views for the price you get. It's, you know, the worst view from my perspective from any football fight. Mm-hmm. If you're too near the front of the pitch. Then you can't see over the heads, and you're just seeing a lot of legs. Yeah. That's the worst position. So you might see on TV those people sitting by the, you know, the advertising stand thinking, oh, they got a really good view. They got some of the worst views. You're far better off having been right at the back of the stadium. Now, I remember going to Wembley twice, right? Once I sat near towards the front rows watching an NFL game. It was horrible. Then I watched Tottenham Real Madrid, and it's right in the third tier at the back behind. And that was a far better view, because I could see everything what's happening in the stadium. So that's the thing about views. I knew it was a decent view. And I said to him, yeah, I'll get this, right? But I didn't have any money on me. I said, look, he goes, yeah, no problem, come back. So I went over, found a cash machine, went around, had 2 bank cards with me, managed to get $350 out, walking down. Everybody's buying, yeah. I was still worried, Matt, is it a fake, is it not? And I was thinking, thinking I'd never bought these things. I go, never, it's one of them things. It is what it is. Other people are buying it. So then I just kind of asked around, do you reckon this ticket's all right? They go, yeah, it looks all right. So yeah, I paid $350 then for that ticket, £350 equivalent, which isn't a lot for Italy, Germany semi-final of the World Cup. In Germany. That's another thing, it's in Germany, right? And
yeah, sure.
Which turned out to be the best game of the World Cup in the end. That was a really good game. And I watched that. I was with the Italian fans, which is where I wanted to be, in the corner. Had a decent view as well. And yeah, that's where I watched that game. And then I was thinking afterwards of going to the final, but it just wasn't feasible. I couldn't really get on a train or get on a bus. I would have to go back. But so that's when I had first experience of an Italian town. I think, these Italians are all right. You can actually do a deal with them, man. They haven't got that now in life. They haven't got that the guy's going to skank you attitude about them, and even you are probably are going to get skunked down the line sometimes. So then I turned up in Milan like 3-4 years ago for that Madrid derby, Champions League final, and I was outside, and again I was watching. But now I was like, it was 7-8 years later, completely different me. It's like I know exactly what to do. I'm old enough now, got white in my beard, man. No longer a young, naive kid. I kind of know exactly what's what. That's what I kind of feel. Walking around in my gap, knowing how to negotiate. So I'm walking around, and these scouts is coming up, and I'm looking at the scouts. I go, man, I ain't gonna buy shit from you, mate. I just can't. But fair play to the scouts, man. He's saying, look, mate, I'll sell you a ticket. Buy two, buy one, right? Your mate will stay here. Yeah, as soon as you get in, ring through your phone and you'll see it's legit. I go, fair enough. If you're offering that type of level of kind of safeguarding, fair enough. I kind of understand. But he wouldn't go cheap. He'd only go up to about 700. And we met these kids from Dubai, right? These Arab kids, yeah. And I said to him, look, we'll help you buy a ticket, because they would think, oh, we've got £1,000 euros to spend. I go, look, I'll get you a ticket for that price. Don't worry, no. So we got them. I go, look, this guy's selling it for like 700. Just, you know, he goes, yeah, we'll take them. So they got those tickets. Oh, did they? I remember? No, I said they didn't get cash with them. I'd went to the bank to get cash, right? They didn't go, right, thinking they'd be. And that's the thing with San Siro, right? It's in a residential place where they built the stadium. There's no cash machines around. So I don't know what happened with them in the end. And then I remember seeing the Spanish guy. I remember him talking around. I said, look, this is without wasting anyone's time. I went to everybody. I said, my limit is £350 equivalent, which is about €350 400. That's my limit. If you sell your ticket, you sell your ticket. If not, I'll just watch on TV. But I'm here in case you don't sell it. That's the message I give to everybody. Apart from some people that just look dodgy. There's one person that was walking up, and he's like a Spanish fan, right? I think a Atletico Madrid fan. I said, how much your ticket? He's at €3,000. So there are people who sell dodgy prices, but they're always kind of fans. It's actually fans who overinflate tickets for other fans because they got a spare ticket.
Sure.
It's not actually touts who've got a wad of tickets to sell. They kind of start off reasonable. Remember the Spanish guy then? He went back, right? It's 10 minutes before the game. He goes, I've not sold this. You can have it for whatever, right? So we bought it off him, right? And so we bought it for €350. The face value was €400. We got it under face value, right? Because it was in like the main section, right, of the stand. So we got a deal here, right? But we're walking up the San Siro thinking we got a really good deal, right? Walking in, and then the thing is, in the San Siro they've got. I don't know if you've seen the San Siro. They've got a tier that's been built on top of another tier, like where Liverpool have built the new tier on the roof. So it wasn't part of the design. It's kind of built it on the roof, right? And whenever you get that type of setup, like the new Liverpool stand, it's going to be further away from the stand because they've had to build it on top of the roof, kind of thing. It's not part of the original design, and that's the thing with the San Siro. It's a big stadium with 75,000, but it's not symmetrical. And this tier is bigger than any other tier, right? And I'll be walking up, right, and thinking, man, when are we going to stop walking? Because the seating situation is getting worse and worse. And we walked, and it's right at the back of the third tier. So it's basically the equivalent. I don't know if anybody's been to Old Trafford and the Alex Ferguson stand, right at the back of that. Now, if you're at the back of that, everyone looks like a stick, man. It's one of the worst views. And I'm thinking, what sounded like a good deal, right, turned out really bad. But there was one silver lining, right? Again, Italian football attitude. Again, it's all the kind of the culture, what I like. It's not like the English one, which is jobs where the stewards will be there policing you, acting, don't do this, don't stand there. That's if you go to an English football match, if you're standing around, wasting, go to your seat, blah, 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 blah. Flipping, can't even stand for a second, right? Italian touts, man, the one thing I loved about them, they didn't give a monkeys. We were standing at the back, sitting at the back, thinking this seat's a bit too rubbish. Why don't we move forward? So we moved right to the front of that third tier. So which is basically, where all the media guys are. So we're right behind all the media guys, right? And we just stood there for the entire match. And we stood as well, and a lot of people like standing. So we had a really good view watching the game, right? And all the Italian students couldn't give a monkeys, man. They were like, yeah, stand where you want, sit where you want, enjoy the game, man. That's one thing I do like about that kind of attitude, man. They're not bothered about this kind of, health and safety. Technically, you should not be sitting here because you can spontaneously combust and cause a fire hazard or some kind of nonsense. So That was a decent story about watching football, the whole Italian culture and football.
Nice one. Well, I think we've come to the end of the podcast, Shaz. So, after all that, what's your overall view of Football Italia? What are you giving it out of a 10 for that time of Italian football? You thought you overhyped it when you were younger. You may be a bit more realistic now. What are you giving it out of 10?
I will still give it a healthy 7 because there's one thing undeniable. This is always go down in the annals of history that period of time, the best players in the world were in Italy. They were in Italy. They might not have been showcased to the best of their talent, but they did have the best players. They did have, and in the end, the fans, the stadiums, whatever, that's all kind of secondary. When you know you've got the best players on the pitch in this kind of league, right? That says something. So for that reason, I'll definitely give it a good 7. And aside from the excitement and the other peripheral things, right? They did have the best players and they did attract the best players. And I don't think there's going to be a period that's going to match that. The Premier League, I don't think will ever match that with Spanish football competing. And now Juventus are competing back. So for that period of time, I think it'll be unprecedented. I don't think we're going to see it again, but it'll go down as the period where this league, they had the best players of the time all playing in there. So I'll give it a good healthy 7.
Right, I'm going to give Football Italia, I think I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. A bit less than you, but 6.5 out of 10.
Is that because you're more bothered about the spectacle and the boring games?
Yeah, the boring games, exactly. Yeah, it didn't really grab me as much as the British game has done overall. So
you're right. One thing I'll say, you're right with the grabbing thing. I think I was there because I remember watching downstairs. My brother, when I was a football, but he never used to watch. He goes, "It's boring." And I was deprived of a lot of Italian football because he would never watch it until we got another TV and I used to go upstairs, right? But I will say, even when I watched it myself, I used to watch it thinking, it's not exciting, is it? It's not exciting. But again, thinking, you've got all the ingredients here, I'm a big football fan, I should watch it. So I think you're right, again, why I've got that myth element to it. I think if I had more your attitude, where it's like, look, I'm not going to go with my brother's attitude. You've got the best players, yeah, but the Premier League at the time was a lot more exciting.
Right, so before you head off, do you have anything to plug?
I've got absolutely nothing to plug other than I'm not even got my social media set.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very, very much for joining me today. We'll see you soon.
See you soon, bye-bye, and everybody out there, stay safe and isolate.